Welcome to Not Factory Approved, episode 91C, continuation of the Pedestal debacle or adventure or creativity. Take your choice. Hope you enjoy. Let's proceed. What I've done so far is to plane these so that they're not as far out as they were. Still got a gap there I don't really like, so I'm going to try now and run them through the table saw and see if I can true them up a bit more. So I'll just take off like a 32nd or a 16th max through there and see if that helps. But they've been sanded. They match in color much better than they did before, which is good. And so that's the leaf at the back end there. And this is the main tabletop. I'll have to put a trim around the edges. I have to do that because of the way the hinge is going to be on the back end, and I have to support these to stop them warping, which I bought this 1/2-inch plywood for. So that will go under and be hidden. So the fence I have on the saw is too short, so I'm just making things worse. It's amplifying the curve rather than straightening it. So back to the plane. Sometimes planing is just what you got to do. So it's definitely improved. I got a couple spots I'm not real happy with, but I'm not sure that'll be a problem. Sometimes trimming it and trimming it and trimming it just gets you into more trouble. So I've got the far one clamped because it's got a twist to it. So I'm just trying to take that out. Glue it all together. Put it on the plywood and screw it from the bottom so the pieces can't bend and twist and warp and spread like other tables I've made. Progress continues. So the next decision is I need a piece to go down the edge, 1 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch plus 3/4. 1/2 inch plywood, 3/4 top boards. So I'm wondering about cutting an 1 1/4 inch strip off of this, and then the 3/4 edge would be upright here. So it goes down. And so I'm only losing 1 1/4 inch of the total width. The table would presently is 35 3/4. If I add a 3/4 inch piece on each side, then it's going to be 37 inches. Whereas if I take this off, it's going to be 32 something, I think. The present table we have is 29 inches wide. So is 3 inches more enough? 35 3/4 minus 1 1/4 inch is 34.5. So that's still a pretty wide tabletop. So I think that's what I'll do. I'll take 1 1/4 inch piece off each end, and then that will be my edge piece. So I'll run this against the fence on the table saw to try and make sure that I get a constant 1 1/4 inch. If I run it through this way, cutting off this side, then it can wander more. So that's what I'll do. So there's the idea. Sitting on the 1/2 inch plywood, this will roll to the side like that, and it is the right thickness. Now to cut the rest of the pieces, and then I'll have to make extra pieces from scratch for the ends, because I'll want another piece like that. One thing I should point out is by doing it this way, I end up with some end grain visible on the end piece, because I don't have any extra on this one to cut a 45. I could cut these shorter, but then it mucks up everything else. So that's what I'm going to have to do. Not really what I wanted, but the alternative is to cut these pieces additional from other boards. And I'm thinking the table's getting too wide at that point. Here's the table in the extended position, and it was really sticky before, So I put some beeswax on the runners, and so I used heat and a beeswax candle, and I rubbed it over all the top surfaces here, side, on each of the runners, and then I waxed in here as well on each runner, and it works way better. Not perfect, but way better. I might have to apply some more, and if that doesn't work, a friend of mine who's into carpentry got a bunch of extending tables which he stripped, and so he has some of the runners, so I might put those on here yet, but I won't be able to get those till another couple months, so I'll try this first. Either way, the top doesn't have to change, the pedestals don't have to change, and I might leave the bottom one as it is, even if I do put those in. I'm putting these on one by one. I put this board on. I measured off 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, etc. and put them in a roughly 1.5 inches in the end. And then I measured off this board. I'm doing the same thing. I glued it and I clamped it to bring it out to the edge, close the gap, and this should stop it from warping. So it's 1/2 inch plywood, 3/4 inch fir. I'm using 1 inch number 8 screws. I think I might let it dry a bit before I put the next one on. One almost tabletop. Big section. We'll do some sanding, little filling, and unfortunately this one is warped like this, and this one's warped like that, so I'm going to have to sand a fair amount so that it's not quite so obvious, and then I'll put the trim that I've trimmed off these edge pieces down here to cover the plywood. So, on to the next stage, which are the little ones. That's the leaf at the end. This is the setup for drilling the holes for the wood plugs. I have it, this is pretty loose, it can just slide. I have the drill press set up so that it can't go beyond a certain depth for the plug. It seems to work so far. A little tighter. Pull this down. Loosen that, slide it. Repeat ad nauseum. All been attached. Got plugs glued in. And then I can use a belt sander. So I can use a belt sander along here to smooth everything off. But then it has to be just a pad sander on the end. Start off coarse and then go to 220 is usually pretty good. Usually turns out pretty smooth. And then stain it. I'm going to try, for filling in the cracks, I'm just going to try grinding in the sawdust, the fine sawdust. And then hopefully the stain and the oil finish will hold it all in place. It won't come out. That would be nice. Otherwise, I have to use the old either filler, which usually doesn't take stain, even when they claim it does, or I have to smear glue into the cracks and then rub in sawdust, and that works. Just means more sanding afterwards. I have completed the main top as far as getting it ready. Actually, that's a lie. I have 220 grit to do yet. Done 150. Edges are all done. The plugs are all ground down. I did find I was able to run across the grain on the end pieces as long as I was using the worn out 50 grit or 80 grit, I think it is. I could still sand down the edges like this, which I have to do yet. I haven't done the leaf. But I could get any big changes done as long as I didn't go down too deep. Left a little bit for the palm sander to do. I have 150 paper in the palm sander, and it does the final leveling quite well. So I have taken a straight edge and I've checked the end. There's a slight difference. This is the end that will have the hinge, and there was a slight gap in the middle using this one. So I think I've taken care of almost all of that. Shouldn't be obvious. And I did that by running the belt sander as square as I could, continually checking it with a tri-square and running it on the high spots. Constantly in motion. Don't stay still with a belt sander. You'll regret it. Here's the finished table. It's operational. It's in its 4-chair mode at the moment. The one on the end you can see is too short to actually sit there. So it can take 2 chairs each side. It's got just slightly under 24 inches. It's 23.5 per person. So that works out. There's a couple of things I would change, and I'll show you what they are in a minute. I'll put the camera down and expand the table. So it's got 3 things that need to change. First, you can see that without a support board underneath, it's bowed. I couldn't get this tight enough to actually hold it straight, and I'm not sure that that's possible. The other problem is that if I lean on this end, then it all comes up. And that's it's a bit alarming to people who are eating. And the other thing I would do, I'm happy with the beam underneath. That works out pretty well. I would raise this beam, these 2 beams here, and sliders, so that they're up right underneath the tabletop. And then I would make a roller and lock mechanism. The roller would lift it so the table is level, and the lock would prevent it from going up too high. I could actually use these hooks that are used to latch it into the pedestal. Over there. Right there. So that's what I would change. Someday I will change them in the not too distant future. Other than that, it seats 8 comfortably. There's a good overhang on the ends. The chair fits properly. So the problem is that the top moves up and down in the middle, which is not good. And you can bump your knees on the support beams underneath. So that's why I would like to raise them up. Here are the dimensions I promised. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or even notify, or any of the above, or all of the above. Thank you.